Have you ever gone to the studio with another engineer and tried to get some recordings done, and just at the end of the day, when it came down to it, you didn't wind up with the results that you wanted? Or maybe you've used these exact words when talking to somebody else who's working on your music, either editing, mixing, mastering, whatever it may be. I hear it in my head, I just don't know how to say what I want. If you've ever uttered these words or you've ever been in this situation, today we're going to give you 3 tips for both sides, for musicians, bands, and engineers, so this never happens to you going forward. Let's have a think on that. Hey everybody, welcome to today's episode. So happy to have you with us. Today we've got a really useful one for everybody involved with trying to create a recorded track, a recorded EP, an album, anything like that is an artist's work or a band's work that has to be finished by somebody who is not in the band or you. There can always be a communication breakdown that can derail everything and make you wind up with this product you didn't want, spending money and resources on things that just don't make you happy and that you maybe don't want to share with the world. Well, it has happened to many of us, and unfortunately, those who don't go in prepared, this usually happens the first or second time in the studio, and we don't want that to happen to you. And even if you've gone in and you've had some results that are great, but some that weren't great or was almost there, this is going to help you get to that next level and make sure you get what you want and what you're paying for. Now, the very, very, very first thing that we're going to go into this with, we're going to give 3 great tips, go right into it. But right before we do, I want to say thank you to everybody who's joined our community. Thank you so much. Anybody that's taking just a second to give us a like or a subscribe, all those things really help. You guys are wonderful. Couldn't do this without you. You guys are the best. Thank you for joining our community. And if you haven't yet, go on, join us. We would love to have you. But let's get to talking. First things first, as we tell you these 3 tips, the caveat I want to give you here, the little asterisk that starts at the beginning is, if this is your first time or second time, and you're working with somebody new that you've never worked with before, or maybe somebody that's pretty good in your community, and you've reached out to them, you found that they are good at doing their job, they have a decent studio, the right equipment, the right skills, the right software, the right hardware, all those boxes have been checked, all bases have been covered. First thing you need to tackle before we get into these 3 tips, before it can even be effective, is that you have to stop and break down all the barriers and walls you have, especially if you're somebody that is well-mannered and shy, excuse me, and just don't like to, be outgoing or confrontational. You have to drop that now, because that's the hardest part about this, is that if you go into this, I have people come in the studio as an engineer all the time that I can see it on their face that they're not happy with it, or they'll list 17 great things about the track, but I'm waiting to get to the part that needs fixed, that they're not quite happy with, so that we can start having that discussion, and it almost never comes, or it's so watered down that, it's great, but I kind of like this, but I don't, and it really makes things difficult. So just get rid of that altogether. Just say that I'm paying for this and I need to be forthcoming with everything that I like, I don't like, what can we fix, what can't we fix, what works, what doesn't work, all those kind of things. So that's it. That's a caveat going in. Start with tip number 1, and it is the biggest one and most important one. And I just want to talk about this because those words that I spoke at the beginning and that maybe you've said or heard as an engineer, I can hear it in my head. I have the idea. I know what I want, but I just don't know how to say it. I don't know how to get across what I want. I've heard this. I cannot tell you. I cannot count it on both hands how many times I've heard that exact phrase from a client or somebody coming in that we're working with, and everything's almost there, but they kind of just can't get across that finish line. And that's the wordage, the verbiage they choose to use. This is how you mend that gap. This is how you meet them. Instead of saying, let's talk more, let's speak out the words, let's sit here and talk. This is that point where if you haven't already got references in your track for what they want, take whatever it is that they're saying they're unhappy with, or that's just not up to the standard they want, or they're imagining something different, and say, yes, I get that, I'm there with you, we're almost understanding each other, but now's the time. Can you go out and get a reference of something that sounds close to that? If it's vocals, do you have somebody in mind, a song, a track that I can go download and pick up that we can reference in our mix to say, get close to this, all those kind of things. And using the audio references can go so much further than you trying to say the words. And the problem that when you're trying to say words or explain audio, if you've been doing this for any amount of time, you'll just hear the same redundant terms over and over and over. I need it warmer, I need brighter, it's too tinny, it's too, all these things, they start to become just meaningless because they're used so much and we don't have enough to say. But references or things you like or you want to get close to or you want to hear can really push things in the right direction, bridge that gap, make it so that you're really hitting what they want to hear, how they want to make that move. And again, whatever it is, if it's guitars, just say, give me something that you like to listen to or what you're in your mind so that I can reference it. And then you could pull that up and say, okay, I could kind of tell what it's like. Like a warmer tone with their guitar. They like it this part of the mix, not this high levels, a little bit further back in the mix. As an engineer, you'll be able to use that and really reference that. Or as a musician, you won't have to say the words, or an artist or a band to come up with like 10 superlatives to say, here's what I want. Like, here, listen to this, close as you can to this, or in this general style, or two different things, somewhere in between here and here. References mean everything. I guarantee if you can just pull out a reference and use that, it'll save you so much time. Unfortunately for me, it took too much time for me to figure that out. Like I should just stop trying to, and I got really good at understanding what people are trying to say, and I got good at putting the words in the mouth, like, is it this what you're looking for? But if it just said, give me a reference, it'll make so much difference. It really just cuts down on the maybe, I hope so, or, especially as an engineer, it'll cut down, 4 or 5, 6 more revisions because you just can't get exactly what they really want in their head, but they can't get out to you. So references, number one, biggest win. Number two is going to be based, kind of closely related to, we had that caveat in the beginning, that asterisk in the beginning. You need to be specific and flexible. And those are two things that have to go together. So what do we mean by that? Instead of coming to them with your revision notes and saying, I like this track, but can we get more bass in this? Or I love the guitars in this, but can we get them just, a little less reverb? Or that, you have to be extremely specific about what you want. I love the vocals, but it's not feeling right, does nothing for anybody. But if you come in and say, my vocals need a little bit more warmth, maybe a little bit more low end, and I really like, in this section works for me, or this part of the mix works for me, or maybe there's another track that was sent through, this one works good. Can we figure out why I like this one so much and versus this one? Having as specific as it can be, even with like the times of the track, like 2 minutes and 34 seconds in, here's this problem, I'm hearing this, can we address this? As specific as possible will get so much work done. And the same thing on the other end, if you're an engineer, whatever you're doing, you're mixing, you're mastering, if you're doing all the production, when you send off your first version of their song to them, just make sure that you're including that in your notes to them. Hey, here's the first version of your song. Take a listen, take your notes, let me know what needs changes, what's working for you. But also, please be very specific. If you need something that needs changed at a specific point, please use the time in the song so that I can reference it instantly and we won't have any mix-ups going on. And just, make sure that you're guiding them the best you can. That communication is a two-way street. But of course, just make sure, be specific, but also be flexible. And the point of that is, of course, we're trying to make things sound as best as we can. We only have so many tools. Yes, there's a lot we can do and a lot more we can do than way before, but you need to be flexible in what you're going after. If you have this very cemented idea in your head of it has to sound like this, it has to be just like, take any band, the Foo Fighters, it has to sound exactly like this. Well, that's never going to happen. You're not the Foo Fighters. You don't write like them. You don't play like them. You don't record like them. You don't have the tools they have. Stop. But if you can get the general in the area of that, and you can be flexible of, I like the guitar sound on this, I like this wall of guitar sound, but you use it and it's kind of feeling not as overwhelming, as big. It's never going to, you don't have access to the tools they have, or if you do, maybe it's just not your recordings and your playing style doesn't work this way. You can get as close as you want, but you just have to understand that it's a meeting in the middle. It's a compromise of sorts that, yes, this is what you want. The more specific you are, they're going to work towards that. And just understand that as you move towards that, you need to be flexible because it's going to be different than what you had in your mind, no matter what it is. It's going to be wonderful. It's going to be unique. It's going to be, I guarantee you, every time I go back and listen to some of the records we did 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, it's like, oh, wow, parts of this were rough. Yeah, I get it. But man, we captured some magic that day. There's always that great thing that comes out of these. So there's your tip number 2. Be very specific, but also flexible in what comes out of that. And the last part I want to talk about is number 3. Now, this one's a little bit difficult, but we're going to talk about it. It's start every session by listening together. And that is just, if you have those references, if you have those things that you want it to sound like, sit down and listen together. Listen to your references for the song before you start doing any changes. Listen to the mix itself. Again, come in, listen on the same stereo, the same speakers. Maybe you send it off to them, they listen to their car, their headphones, in their room, with their significant other, with the bandmates in a crappy location, whatever it is. Come in and listen in the same room, in the same speakers, if possible, and be on the same page. Take a listen. We're hearing it. Okay, let's talk about what works, what doesn't work. And honestly, if you can, making those changes in person, I love that we're able to work remotely. It's great. You send me notes, I do the best I can and send it back. But instead of having 3 or 4 revisions, you can knock that right out with just having them in session. Come on in, let's sit down, let's talk about it. Here's how we can make the changes. And exactly, they can hear that flexibility, see you trying to make as close as you can to the changes they need, how it sounds, where you're gonna meet in the middle, what the compromise is. And because they're part of the process, they accept it. Or if you are the musician or artist, you go and see and you do the best you can in person with them. And because you're part of it, you're like, okay, we did good. We got the changes I needed. I feel like we went in the right direction. And you're okay. And you move on to the next thing instead of a 3rd, 4th, or 5th revision. I know that that's not always possible. If we work remotely, again, just say that, hey, if we can sit here and talk. And another thing that is great to work, I've done at least, in the last 6 months, 3 or 4 remote ones when it comes down to the end of the process. And the best thing you can do for that is if you're running into these walls, make a phone call. Just say, hey, let's find some time to talk on the phone because so much gets lost in text and words and emails. Let's just talk on the phone and talk about what works. Being able to have that back and forth conversation really makes a huge difference. And maybe you can listen to the song on the phone together. I'll play it, you listen, or you listen to your side, I'll listen to my side. We can take notes together, all those different things. But the more that you can talk in person, the more that you can actually have that conversation, so much more gets done. But that's just if it's remote. If not, the best case scenario is come in, have a designated person for the band, or have the artist come in, or if you were the artist or the band leader, go in for the mix or the mastering session, do the notes with them, work through it together, and I promise you'll get done so much faster and you'll be so much happier with your end result. So 3 easy tips, but super big game-changing tips that make sure that at the end of the day, whatever you paid for or whatever you're getting paid to do, hit that level that everybody wants, and you're gonna get better reviews, you're gonna get a better album, a better EP as an artist, all those things. You're gonna be so much happier with the resources that you spent on this because you followed these 3 tips. Again, if any of these have helped you, give us a like. If you haven't yet, join our community, subscribe. We do this kind of stuff all the time, come with ideas and give you the things that'll help you move forward faster in your career and get more out of what you have going forward. So again, thank you guys so much for being here today, and we'll see you on that next one. Bye.